All right, let's talk about Jared Goff and the Detroit Lions offense, how they will attack Tampa Bay and their defense. I already made a video on the other side of the ball, Baker Mayfield going up against the Lions defense, but let's get into the other, to this side, because I think it's a lot of interesting stuff. First, let's just look at some Pro Football Focus grades from specific positional categories, and you see everything is favoring Detroit. They're top 10 in everything. Tampa Bay isn't even top 17 in anything. So a lot of favoring Detroit here. Passing was sixth best. Receiving third best. Tampa Bay 22nd in coverage. Pass blocking seventh best. Tampa Bay's been okay pass rush. They've been 18th. And then run blocking second best, running ninth, and then the Buccaneers. They've actually, so this is the weird thing though, they've graded very poorly run defense wise, but their overall numbers, like their results, have tended to be pretty good. And part of me wonders if an element of it is on an individual by individual basis, the grade is poor, but they have specific players who are really good at stopping the run, like Vita Vea and Levante David, who kind of make up for that. I don't know, but just something to note, I think. Even talking about the running game, it was a disaster the first time they played. I mean, they weren't running, the Detroit Lions were not running the ball at all. This is an example of this, where it's going to be a 2nd down and 7 situation, and to the point where the Lions kind of just stopped running the ball altogether pretty quickly on. But, watch what happens. Goff is going to hand the football off, and there is just no room for him to go. And this was one of the few times that the Lions weren't able to consistently run the ball. And again, should be mentioned, I'm using footage from week 6. These are two very different football teams. The Lions were missing a handful of starters in this game that has to be mentioned. So, saying that because it worked one way the first time does not guarantee it's going to go the other way the second time. And that obviously works in both ways, positive and negative for both teams. But that being said, I think the Lions are going to try on the ground, but I don't know if that's actually going to be their number one strategy of how to, keep the Buccaneers honest. Because, going over to a play like this, what's the one thing that, I think even if you're a big Jared Goff fan, you kind of acknowledge is a weakness? If you can blitz and surprise him, get free rushers, it can get him in trouble, right? He's not the most mobile quarterback, and he is someone who sometimes under pressure makes poor decisions, right? The Rams game was kind of the perfect Jared Goff game, right? Where he was basically perfect, but then he got under pressure and panicked and threw the ball backwards, and luckily the Lions recovered. And other than that, Goff was, maybe missed a throw or two, but was really good other than that one disaster. Tampa Bay, to win this game, they might need to generate a disaster or two. On this play, they have a blitzing linebacker, Devin White. Watch as you're going to see him get a straight shot to Goff. He hits Goff, who Goff kind of just throws it into the ground. That was a good play by Jared Goff, but you generated, a throwaway, which is definitely a good situation if you're Tampa Bay, because now you're getting them off, their rhythm. I think sometimes when, teams play a unit like the Detroit Lions, which is so predicated on getting you out of position and fooling you and tricking you, a lot of times defenses almost play a little cautious. And they say, okay, well, I got to make sure I'm in position. I got to make sure I'm not screwing stuff up. I think Todd Bowles recognizes that the opposite is actually the better strategy. You have to go trying to get them off their game and try to confuse them. That is sort of the cat and mouse aspect of it. But if you notice, while the Lions did not have a ton of rushing yards, they had a lot of passing yards. But it wasn't a traditional way. It wasn't just throwing the ball down the field like you might expect. It was a lot of stuff like this, where it's going to be just a wide receiver screen. The wide receiver screens and even just quick passes to wide receivers were huge in this game for the Detroit Lions. They have two receivers going out to block. And watch how, this isn't even going to be like a crazy play, but you see that they're able to, pick up a first down on first down, right? Get a 10-plus pickup there. And what does that do? Well, if you're trying to send pressure and you're trying to play man coverage and trying to blitz like that, you have less room on the outside. You have less guys on the outside who can play. And typically, the way you try to get teams, to stop doing this crazy exotic blitzing is they're getting themselves out of position. So you run the ball in that direction and kind of, can get yards that way. Well, if the Lions can't do that, because the running game isn't working as well, then this is the way that they can keep the Buccaneers honest, is with the wide receiver screens. And I think this is both a positive and a negative for the Lions. I think it's mostly a positive. I think the fact that they have this and the fact that they can do this is just straight up a positive, in fact. The negative, though, is that Tampa Bay should be aware of this, and Tampa Bay should be ready to potentially jump a route or something like that. And again, if you can get a splash play, right? If you can get a disaster, that might be what they need to do, because this is the Buccaneers team that, both of these defenses have given up yards this season, but also have generated turnovers. That's kind of the unique thing about it. And if, you can win the turnover battle by 2, that could be enough to swing a loss into a win. But going over here, for Tampa Bay, though, even if there is ways to beat the blitz with those wide receiver screens, I kind of think you got to still blitz a lot and still play a lot of man coverage. I don't think it's the easiest strategy, but they did try to drop back in the zone at times. Like this one, they're not exactly selling what they're going to do, but they are going to drop back in the zone. But Amon-Ra St. Brown running this route over the middle, and pretty much every time that's Reynolds who's running that route. But watch what happens. Reynolds is going to almost immediately get open, and Goff is getting rid of the football so quickly. I mean, he reads these plays so well that even if it was a good disguise, it didn't matter. Goff was getting rid of the football, and they were getting guys open. Look, it's a catch. That's a big, really a huge gain on that one. That's, we're talking about 20 yards on that play. That's just something that you have to be, prepared for if you're Tampa Bay, is those over the middle routes like that against zone are killer. And quite frankly, I think just don't even try it if you're the Buccaneers. Do a lot of man, do a lot of blitzing. Every now and then you kind of have to keep them honest. But to me, that is the strategy. But again, it's very much a strategy in how you slow down the Lions, not how you stop them, because no one stops the Lions offense really. I mean, they're tough to beat. But okay, predictions page here. As you see, the Buccaneers defensive points per drive, 1.9, which is, actually better than you might think. I think, the certain defensive metrics haven't been great for Tampa Bay, but largely due to the turnovers, they have actually ended up having a above average defensive points per drive. Not much above average, but above average. The Detroit Lions offense, though, is one of the best in football. 2.45. That's, a top 5 scoring unit, points per drive wise. And the previous time they played, it was a, 2 on the dot. They scored 20 points on 10 drives. So what do I foresee happening here? Well, again, the turnover thing is such a wild card. I think I see the Lions still being able to move the ball effectively, though. I'm going to go 2.1 points per drive in this game. I think that there's, some reason to believe that this could be a, competitive opportunity for the Buccaneers defense. I do think that this is going to be something where it's not going to be a typical Lions offensive unit day, right? I mean, they're not going to get to 2.5 points per drive. They nearly average, which again is a crazy number, but I also don't think that it's going to be a disaster either. And I think they'll even be a little better than last time. My final score prediction, I am picking the Lions to beat the Bucs 21-19. A bit of a lower scoring game, not a, complete low scoring game, but a bit on the lower side here. I do think that there is potential for this game to go either way. I think that the 6 points, again, maybe I'm just a homer being a Buccaneers fan, that feels a bit much for me. I feel like Tampa Bay has shown enough, and again, it is worth mentioning, what have you done lately? And I think sometimes people get a little bit too crazy about the what have you done lately stuff, because there has to be a reason for it, why you've been better lately. But I think there is a reason for the Buccaneers. They had a quarterback who was playing with all these players for the first time. It makes sense that he would get better as the season progressed, and kind of in the second half when he started playing a lot better, that logically follows. The Buccaneers having healthy corners for kind of the first time, that obviously makes sense. And again, for Detroit, they had a bunch of guys missing in this game, and they're getting healthy now as well. So that all factors. And I do think that if the turnover battle is equal, I think the Lions are going to win this one. But if the Lions, turn the ball over a couple of times, I do think that could swing it. So for Tampa Bay, I think that, win a turnover battle by 2, you probably win the game. But if you can't do that, I think Detroit's going to take it. That's what I think. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.